The lake was mine, not in some greedy, possessive way, but in the way you hold onto a piece of your soul. It was 3 acres of shimmering blue, tucked behind my cedar-shingled cabin, a gift from my late father who'd spent his last years casting lines into its depths, whispering dreams of peace to me under the rustling pines. I'd moved here to Eden's Hollow to escape the city's clawing noise, to breathe air that smelled of damp earth and freedom. But Karen Whitmore, with her clipboard and her HOA rulebook thicker than a Bible, had other plans. This lake, she declared one muggy August morning, her voice sharp as a wasp's sting, is a community asset. It's for everyone. She stood on my porch, her platinum bob unmoving in the breeze, her eyes glinting with the kind of righteous glee that made my stomach churn. I told her it was private property, deeded to me alone. She smirked, lips thin as a razor. We'll see about that. The air that day was heavy, thick with the scent of honeysuckle and the distant hum of cicadas. I stood at the edge of my porch, fists clenched, watching her march back to her golf cart, her heels clicking like a metronome of doom. Eden's Hollow was a quiet subdivision, a patchwork of tidy lawns and cookie-cutter homes. But my cabin sat on the fringe, the lake a hidden gem most folks didn't even know existed. I liked it that way. I'd spent months restoring the place, sanding the oak floors until my hands blistered, planting wildflowers that danced in the wind. The lake was my sanctuary, where I'd kayak at dawn, the water so still it mirrored the sky's blush. But Karen, president of the HOA, had sniffed it out like a bloodhound. She'd seen me out there one morning, paddles slicing through the mist, and decided my piece was her crusade. She didn't waste time. By noon the next day, a letter arrived, printed on crisp HOA letterhead, demanding I open access to the lake for all residents. Community harmony. It preached. I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed off the pine walls. Harmony. This was theft dressed in bureaucracy. I crumpled the paper, tossed it into the fireplace, and watched it curl into ash. But Karen wasn't done. She started rallying neighbors, knocking on doors, her voice carrying across the cul-de-sacs like a siren's call. It's unfair, she'd say, for one person to hoard such a resource. I heard her through my open window, her words slicing through the evening's quiet, each syllable a needle in my skin. People nodded, swayed by her promises of picnics and fishing trips. People I'd never spoken to started eyeing my property like it was a public park. I tried reasoning at first. I went to the HOA meeting, a fluorescent-lit room that smelled of stale coffee and self-importance. I stood up, my voice steady but my heart hammering, and explained the deed, the history, my father's love for that lake. Karen sat at the head of the table, her pen tapping a rhythm of impatience. The rules are clear, she said, cutting me off. Private or not, this community thrives on shared spaces. The room murmured agreement, and I felt the walls closing in, the air thick with judgment. I left that meeting with my jaw tight, the taste of defeat bitter on my tongue. But then came Jasper. He was the unexpected twist, the wild card I didn't see coming. A lanky guy in his 60s. He lived 2 streets over in a house overgrown with ivy. He showed up at my door one evening, his flannel shirt smelling faintly of wood smoke, a thermos of coffee in his hand. Heard about your lake trouble, he said, his voice gravelly but kind. Karen's been pulling this crap for years. Did it to me with my garden shed, called it an eyesore. I fought her and won. His eyes twinkled with mischief, and for the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. Jasper wasn't just a neighbor. He was a retired lawyer who'd spent decades battling HOAs like ours, over coffee that tasted like burnt toast. He laid out a plan. You've got the deed, he said. That's your sword. But you need to shield something to make her back off for good. The days that followed were a blur of emotion, a pendulum swinging between rage and resolve. I'd wake to the sound of birdsong, only to see Karen's golf cart parked at the edge of my property, her clipboard out as she scribbled notes. Once, I caught her leading a group of kids to the lake's edge, pointing at it like she owned it. This'll be perfect for the community barbecue, she said, loud enough for me to hear. My blood boiled, my breath catching in my throat. I wanted to scream, to tear her rulebook to shreds. But Jasper's voice echoed in my head. Don't fight loud. Fight smart. We dug into the HOA bylaws. Jasper and I, our evenings filled with the rustle of papers and the clink of beer bottles. The lake was zoned as private, untouchable by HOA rules unless I consented, which I never would. But Karen had influence, and she was relentless. She started a petition, signatures piling up like storm clouds. I'd see neighbors glance at me in the grocery store, their eyes darting away. Guilty. The air around my cabin felt heavier, the lake's calm surface mocking my turmoil. I'd sit on the dock at night, the water lapping softly, and feel my father's absence like a weight. He'd loved this place, and now it was a battlefield. Then came the turning point. Jasper found a loophole county ordinance that allowed me to fence my property without HOA approval if it was for security and privacy. My heart raced as I read the fine print. The words a lifeline, a fence, a physical, undeniable barrier. I could almost hear Karen's gasp, see her face twist in defeat. We moved fast. I hired a crew, and by the next week, the sound of hammers and saws filled the air, drowning out the cicadas. The fence went up 6 feet of solid cedar, wrapping the lake like a fortress. I stood back, hands on my hips. The scent of fresh wood sharpened my nose. It was beautiful, a declaration louder than any words. Karen lost it. She stormed over as the final posts were driven into the ground, her face red as a summer sunset. You can't do this, she shrieked, her voice cracking like dry twigs. This is an outrage. I stood on my side of the fence, the wood warm under my palms, and smiled. It's my land, Karen, my lake. You don't get to rewrite my deed. She sputtered, her clipboard trembling in her hands. But I saw the cracks in her armor. The neighbors she'd rallied were nowhere to be seen, their enthusiasm fading when faced with the fence's reality. Jasper was there, leaning against a tree, his grin wide as the horizon. Told ya, he mouthed. But the real victory came at the next HOA meeting. Karen tried to rally her troops, her voice shrill as she waved a new petition to review my fence. I walked in with Jasper at my side, my folder of documents heavy in my hands. The room was packed, the air thick with tension and the faint smell of sweat. I laid out the deed, the ordinance, the proof that the lake was mine and always would be. Jasper spoke, his voice calm but cutting, dismantling Karen's arguments like a house of cards. When he finished, the room was silent, the weight of truth settling over everyone. Karen's face was a mask of fury, but her eyes betrayed her defeated. Small. The vote to challenge my fence failed. 12-3. I walked out into the cool night, the stars sharp above the lake. I could breathe again, the air clean, the weight gone. The fence stood tall, its shadow stretching across the water, a line drawn in the sand. I thought of my father, his quiet laugh, the way he'd cast his line with hope every morning. This was his legacy, and I protected it. Karen moved away a month later. Her house sold to a quiet couple who waved when they saw me. The neighborhood settled, the whispers fading like ripples on the lake. I kayaked at dawn again, the paddle's rhythm steady, the water's chill kissing my skin. Justice wasn't loud or vengeful, it was this, the quiet of my lake. Mine again, forever.